Welcome to Transformative Talks, where meaningful conversations meet holistic wellness. I'm your host, Chelsea Gilbert. As a massage therapist and wellness professional, I've seen firsthand how healing happens through connection, education, and self-discovery. We explore topics like nervous system regulation, mental health, body work, spirituality, personal growth, and more, all through a holistic lens. Whether you're beginning your healing journey or looking to deepen it, here you'll find inspiration, practical tools, and empowering conversations to support you on your journey. Make sure to subscribe and get ready to tune in to the conversation. We are back again, and today we have Crestani here with us. She is an inner authority guide, and she is helping people in multiple ways with multiple things, and all of it is really amazing. So, Catherine, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Chelsea. I'm excited to see where we go today. We'll
I
see.
know. I feel like the conversation is just going to go a little bit everywhere.
That summarizes me.
Yeah, me too. So, tell people a little bit about where you're from and how you went down the path of becoming an inner authority guide.
So I am just south of Sydney in Australia. It is very cold here at the moment. I do not like the cold. So I'm looking forward to relocating some point soon when spirit aligns. But my background is as a speech language pathologist, which I did for nearly 2 decades. So I was out when I came out. I had big aspirations and big dreams like we all do, and I hit every one of them, So when I think I'd been working for about 2 years, one of my bosses at the time, she offered me her business partnership. And so I bought in. And straight away, I could feel these kind of cracks. And it was funny, the day she rang me, I was driving to a school to go start my own business. So part of me followed my instinct and did that anyway. So I was still doing that at the same time. But my focus was on the business partnership, and we ended up building it to a point it was a 7-figure business. We had 8 full-time speech therapists. We had 2 admin staff. We were leasing one of the rooms to an occupational therapist. We were looking at expanding to an allied health, but it just wasn't working. But before I realized it wasn't working, my marriage was distracting me from being the highlight of the not happiness in my life, if you will. So what I'd done was, not because my ex-husband asked me to do that, but I had constantly given up parts of myself because I felt that would make him happy. And so it was like, even just little things, like I wasn't listening to the same music that I used to love, and I used to make my friends mixtapes and CDs to take on road trips all the time. Like I love music. I still love music, but I put all that to the side, and I'd constantly give away pieces myself because in my mind, if he was happy, it was okay. And it was only when I really sat down and realized how numb I was in my relationship that I realized I wasn't okay. So I had to learn to choose myself in that moment. And I had to have the courage, and anyone who's gone through this, I understand you need courage to put a bomb in your life, because when you choose to dissolve a relationship, especially when you have assets together and all those things, we were fortunate we didn't have children, but all those things that you have to weigh up, choosing yourself is a true act of courage. So once I'd sorted that out, and I was truly happy, Chelsea, once I stepped out of my marriage, like people were like, "You look amazing. Have you lost weight?" And I was like, and I joke and say, "Yeah, I've lost 80 kilos, which is what my ex-husband used to weigh." And they're like, "What? We didn't know you needed to lose that much weight." And I was like, "Well, actually, no, I'm getting divorced." And like, "We're so sorry." And I'm like, "I'm not." It was just, no one knew what to do with it. But as I stepped more into myself, literally a couple months later, I actually met my husband now, and I was adamant. I'm like, "I'm happy. I'm going to be single. I don't need to do any of this again." And he was the same. He just stepped out of a marriage. And then all of a sudden we find ourselves together. But because I was happy then on the personal front, I noticed I wasn't spending as much time at the office because that's how I was avoiding my relationship, right? I would stay there till 9 or 10 o'clock at night quite happily because it meant I didn't have to go home and face the difficult situation. So all of a sudden now my business partnership starts to fall apart, but I've been building up my company in the background, and I call my business partnership my nasty divorce because it was pretty nasty when it fell apart. But at the same time, I built my company up, and that was mine. No one could tell me what to do. No one could weigh in on my decisions, and I built that up to a 6-figure company. But my husband said to me the year before kind of was going through my spiritual journey. Actually, I'd already started by that point, but he said to me, "You're not happy running your company. I think you should sell it." And I said to him, "Well, what are we going to do for money?" All those sorts of things, because it's really hard to see outside the situation you're in. But in the meantime, I'm achieving all those tick boxes of success, right? I'm married, I've got a house, I had a child by that point. My businesses were all on paper incredibly successful. I employed this staff, all these things. But this deep yearning of there's something more, there's something more. And I kept saying, even to my husband, I'm meant for something more. This isn't fulfilling me. So I went and did lots of courses. I would go do all different allied health courses. I went and learned from pediatricians. I went and learned from dietitians. Nothing filled my cup up. It would for a minute, but it wouldn't hold because it didn't excite me. And I was really good at my job. I actually didn't realize why I was so good at my job because I worked with a lot of children with autism spectrum disorder, and I would have full conversations with them. And I said to the parents, "Oh, they want this." And they're like, "Did they say that?" And I'd be like, "Of course they did." But I think part of it was I was having a telepathic communication with them, but I didn't realize at the time. I didn't understand what it really was. It was only a couple of years ago, actually. I was listening to the telepathy tapes, that podcast, and I was like, "Oh, I understand now," because I really didn't. So through that, I was not okay health-wise in saying that. I was in burnout, adrenal fatigue, insomnia. I had panic attacks. I had anxiety. I had all those things that come with your system being in chronic stress. And it's funny because if you're doing something passionate, this doesn't happen. You have a little bit of stress, but you're not chronically stressed. And it was that my system was basically saying, we need to shut down. Like, you can't keep going on this way. And the only reason I could go on for as long as I did was I was seeing my naturopath basically every week. And it was one of those sessions I was booking in for him that I saw his partner had a new offering. And I think it was something to do with I don't know. I didn't even know what it meant at the time. And he goes, "Yeah, you should do it." I'm like, "Okay." So I did. And I booked in, and she became my spiritual mentor. And every 2 weeks I went back, and it was a very rapid awakening. So my gifts came, I say, back online really quickly. I reconnected with my spirit team. I was just curious and hungry. And suddenly I'm like, oh my goodness, this is what I'm meant to be doing. So my dark night of the soul was my company falling apart because I couldn't let that go. So in the space of...
But it had to go.
It had to go. So, and I can't make this stuff up, Chelsea. So in the space of 3 months, in the first month, in the space of a week, I had 3 employees resign. Now, by this point, I knew I wanted to do more spiritual work. I wanted to start stepping back from my business. I wanted to get a manager. I wanted to actually make both work. But to have 3 staff resign in a week, I went into absolute meltdown. I actually was in a ball on the floor because it's really hard to find good staff, especially allied health in Australia. I was like, oh my goodness, I can't do this, and my husband and my son were like, "It's okay, you can get up." My guides were like, "It's okay, you can get up." And I'm like, I just want to quit right here, right now. I don't want to do this. Anyway, so I did get up off the floor. Obviously, I'm here today. And then I still hadn't found new staff. And a month later, in the space of a week, another 3 staff resigned. And I will tell you right now, they were all for completely unique reasons, and none of them knew the other staff were resigning. But by this point, I was incredibly angry. I was so angry. I went out to where I meditate on this rock, and I'm like yelling at the universe, why are you doing this? I'm doing all the things. Took that anger out accidentally on an employee, but then I took responsibility for that and went and apologized. She's like, "I actually have more respect for you now than I did before because you actually took responsibility for that." So for anyone listening, if you do that, just own it. It's one of the biggest things you can do. And then a month later, in the space of a week, another 3 staff resigned. So by this, I haven't replaced anybody, mind you, Chelsea. So by this point, I went, you know what? These people aren't meant to be in my life anymore, and I'm not meant to have this business anymore. I'm just letting it go. And then I went and I actually made the decision, either I'll find a buyer or the doors are shutting. I'm not renewing the lease. That's the point I got to. Fortunately, the universe did send me a buyer, but then I actually got $250,000 for my business. It was amazing. I thought all my financial woes I sorted. I paid out a chunk of debt, over half of that paid out a chunk of debt. And then I was like, great, we'll be set up for a while. But I didn't believe I was worthy of that money because technically I didn't work hard for it in my brain. It just arrived in my bank account. So then I had to go face my self-worth story. So in the midst of that, I kept working as a speech therapist as part of the deal with the person that bought the company, and I stayed too long. So I only had to stay a year, and then it got past that year, but we had this big mortgage and everything that comes with that. And my husband's like, you have to keep working for our family. I'm like, but every time I go, my soul dies a little bit because I can't work in the capacity I want to work. I was very good at my job. I love working with children. I love helping them communicate. But at the same time, I wasn't able to work in my full capacity because I could see what they needed. I could see outside of, and I had a couple of clients who knew what else I did, and they were my favorite because they're like, you just do your spiritual woo stuff and that's fine. And then you tell us, you tell us what's going on. I was like, okay. I was like, no worries. But it wasn't enough to keep filling my cup up because I knew there was just this yearning. Then it got to this point, I had a coach at the time, and I started actually going numb. So I went to give him my resignation because we decided that we were going to sell the house. And so we would have more freedom in terms of what we could do, where we could live. And I went to give my resignation to my boss. And instead of doing what my intuition was telling me, which was to write, I don't know, the 30th of April as the date that I would finish up, I chickened out and I put when the house sells. Now, let me tell you, Chelsea, if you condition the universe instead of embracing your lesson, it will not work out. It has been over a year and my house still hasn't sold. However, what happened, and I like reflecting back, I can put the timeline together. I started to go numb. After that, I started to lose feeling in my left pinky. It went up through my left arm. I got to a point I couldn't feel half my face, and I was genuinely scared. And every day, because I'm intuitive, I woke up and I heard, you're heading for an autoimmune. You're heading for an autoimmune, because my system was still not fully recovered from the high amount of stress and cortisol it had. My nervous system was fried still. It still wasn't okay. So I went to my beautiful support team. I went to chiropractors, to massage therapists, to osteopaths, like homeopaths, everybody. And it would shift for 2 days. And then it would come back. And everyone had a different theory. Oh, it's your liver. Oh, it's you have tennis elbow. Oh, it's this, your neck's out of alignment. You need a adjustment, whatever it might be. And it was only when I was interviewing this beautiful couple that I met on my podcast that they said to me, Catherine, you already know if you don't figure out the cause, nothing's going to shift. I was like, I'm numbing myself to go to work. It was that simple. So I ended up just quitting. I was meditating with my coach, and my heart basically said, he's like, if your heart could tell you one thing right now, what would it be? And the words quit came up, and it was like a non-negotiable, this is your last warning, listen to this or it's going to get really bad. And basically I would have ended up in a wheelchair because that's how much feeling I was losing. And I went, okay, I'll quit. It caused a big bomb in my marriage because my husband now had to go back to work because he was a stay-at-home dad, had to change roles. We had no idea how we would get enough money, but I just knew I had to do that. And so I did. And the first day I was at home with my son, every single one of my symptoms disappeared. Every
Of course they
single
did.
one. So in the meantime, through all of that, I started writing, and it became like a beautiful outlet for me, like writing articles, writing my books, because I love writing. And through all of that, then I started attracting clients, but I didn't know what I wanted to do because I can do a bit of everything, right? So I was like, my coach at the time was like, I'll focus on mums in business. I was like, ugh, that doesn't excite me. Like, it really doesn't. Like, I did what I had to do in business because I was building a business. So I was like a lost little sheep trying to find what she wanted to do. And then I wrote a novel, completely left field. Well, I thought it was. And then it ended up being about loneliness and people living in a fantasy of what a relationship is actually happening. And then, Chelsea, all these clients started coming to me of working on relationships,
You flipped the
going through
switch.
divorce. I flipped the switch and I was like, why am I working with these clients? I want to be removing entities of people, doing this high level spiritual work. And then someone said to me, how do you know these clients won't become those people? And I was like, yeah, okay, thank you. Because we put these limits on who we should be seeing when the universe is lining these people up. And it's not what you originally stepped into, right? So then all of a sudden, I'm like this relationship kind of coach. And then I went, actually, you know what? I am leading people back to themselves so they can feel more joy and connection in their life, so they can connect with themselves, connect with their gifts, connect with others, and then connect with the world in the way that they were meant to serve. I was like, well, that's pretty impactful. I'm like, I love this. Thank you so much. But I was really adamant not to do love readings. I was very adamant. So now I do them on my terms. So, and with that as well, we needed some extra cash because, again, I was still working through my worth story. And I was like, oh, I wonder what jobs there are for psychics. So I joined a psychic hotline. They still exist. And I ended up getting nonstop love readings. And the first 2 weeks were terrible. I absolutely hated it. And I sat down with my guides. And I said, am I meant to be doing this? They're like, we are so excited you're doing this because you're facing every one of your shadows really quickly, right? Because it's like speed dating, but you have to be accurate. You have to trust what comes out of your mouth. You have to rely on your intuition. You have to put aside any doubt that you have, and you have to put aside your own perspectives and just put them in a box and just become a conduit. And so my intuitive skills and my channeling just amped up massively. What was really cool was they leave you little statistics there, and it's like, wow, you've answered. And I was checking the other week because I still do it, but I was checking the other week. Served over 263 people through calls. I was like, my goodness, what a good way. I could have defaulted and gone back to my old profession. I truly didn't want to. It made me sick thinking about it, because we needed the cash. But I was like, no, I'm going to do this on my terms. I want to do this my way. And this is the thing, when you stay convicted to the path, you will be tested. But if you stay and honor yourself, then this beautiful thing happens. And then I get to work on love readings, but do them in my own way. But a lot of people get stuck in that relationship of what could be rather than what is as well.
It's interesting. By the way, so much good stuff in that story, in your real life story. It's interesting because as you're talking about the romance and the love stuff was coming, the story kind of opened up. You were in a marriage you weren't happy in, and you had to move yourself out of it. You had to take the steps through it. And it's almost like that had to happen.
Yeah.
So you have that firsthand experience so you can help other people do it because you did it for yourself.
Exactly. And I always say my story is a lifetime of learning to choose myself and put myself first. Because, even stepping out my business partnership, even selling my company, even though my husband saw it 6 months before I caught up, even quitting my job, sometimes you really have to learn how to choose yourself and put yourself first. And we've been so conditioned that that's selfish, but it's really not. And because we think it's selfish, we end up abandoning ourselves.
And then all the crappy stuff starts to happen and we're going, why is all this bad stuff happening?
Yeah. And then you start attracting into your field these stories and these examples of how you're not worthy or how you're not worth to be first, or how people will constantly keep stepping on top of you because you are stepping on top of you rather than putting yourself in the number one position.
So do you notice a common theme around why people are abandoning themselves in relationships?
A lot of the time it's just easier. And I'm saying that because it is hard to end a relationship, especially a long term. Then we have this school of people who believe they have to meet these certain goals because life has told them that this is what their life should look like. So, by 30, you should be married and have 2 kids. That's one example, right? Or if you're in a career, by the age of 40, you should be a senior partner. And then we have this fear of missing out. I'm 30 and I'm not married. My goodness, what am I going to do? So we have these things in our background. So then people just settle, even though their intuition's saying this isn't right. Instead, they're just accepting what lays into them. My cousin and I years ago, we actually said it's a photo. I think we called it fear of dying alone, photo. Because loneliness comes into play as well. Like, a lot of people will make decisions out of loneliness because they're afraid to face themselves. So instead of going, all right, I'm in the same relationship again, I'm in the same cycle again, this is the 3rd person I've dated, and I'm feeling this way, this way, this way. Usually it's like, oh, I'm putting myself last, or I don't feel worthy. Or another one a client used was, I've shrunk myself to the point I can't shrink myself anymore, which broke my heart when she said that. But, it's all those sorts of things, and it makes it hard to step away. And the other aspect is we have this idea of what our relationship should look like in our head. My example I give is when we get married and we're exchanging vows, we don't project forward 5 years and see the divorce, right? We don't go, well, in 5 years, I'm going to divorce this person. I do. Instead, we sit there and we imagine a life together, and it might be kids for you. It might be going traveling. And then when it doesn't work out that way, there's still part of us holding on to that dream that we originally had. And we don't give our space to mourn that dream. And I've had a lot of clients, especially going through divorce, where we've had to sit there and go, okay, well, do you actually think the other person's going to change? Or do you think and feel that anything's going to shift? And they already know the answer is no, but they have to still mourn it. And it's like grieving someone who's passed. We have to grieve the dream. So even when my husband and I decided to sell the house, this was meant to be our forever house. We built it to stay here forever. And now we're selling it. And we had to grieve that dream and let it go. When I sold my company, that wasn't the part where I started grieving. It was when I noticed it kept falling apart because the problems that were there when I sold it was still there when I was working in it. And watching that company fall apart, I had to grieve that. There would be no business in a few years' time, which it isn't existent anymore. So, there's all these little things that you believe it's easier to stay because you're still stuck in this false reality of what your life is and what is actually happening. And your body will know. I can guarantee you, your body will start telling you you're not listening. So when you don't listen to your body, what ends up happening is like me, I went numb. For a lot of my clients, they'll get really sick all the time. I have had clients break bones, which because they need to break foundations and they're still holding on to these ideas of what could be. I had a client break her foot and feed her about moving forward because she was trying to step forward but still had a foot in the past and she literally broke her foot. So I'm not saying this to scare people, but this is, you need to listen to your emotions, because when you don't and stop listening to yourself, your body will start talking, and your body does not lie, and it will just keep turning it up, turning it up, turning it up. And you know this, Chelsea, working at how you work as well. Your body holds everything. There's no escaping, and your body will not lie to you. So instead of going, oh, I've got a headache again, I'm going to take that Tylenol or that Panadol and numb it. Why do I have a headache? Where am I not processing something happening in my life? Why is my brain hurting over what's happening?
Yeah. So a couple of things. It definitely sounds like when we were talking about why do people abandon themselves in relationships? Definitely the idea of just this collective conditioning around, what should be, how things are supposed to be, what timeline they're supposed to be on, and everyone's doing it, so you have to do it too. And then just the human need for connection, which globally, I wouldn't say every culture, every country has kind of abandoned the kind of community mindset, but I know here in America it's me first, and we've kind of lost that. We don't live in little cohorts anymore. Everyone lives by themselves, or every family's separate. You go off and leave your family. So it definitely feels like collectively there is that need for community and connection, and we try to project all that onto relationship. And then the last thing that you said, what was the last thing that you said?
Your body doesn't lie.
Yeah. Yeah, that one. So, and then talking about how it's really important to be aware of the signs and signals that you're getting from your body internally, but also externally when things kind of start to fall apart or get crazy and you see a noticeable pattern. It's so funny that you said that, because this morning I was listening to it's like a trauma-informed coaching program. And as I was listening to it, I was able to like relate things and patterns that had happened in my life. And I had just had this revelation. And I was like, that's why that keeps happening. I have to kind of go back and like dig into it a little bit to try to correct it. But it just sometimes being aware of the patterns and the things that keep coming up for you can really help you make connections. So, because if you don't know, you can't change it.
No, and this is where a lot of people pray for signs, right? But then they're not open to look for the signs. This is the thing, right? So they'll put it down
I
to,
don't
oh,
want
that's
that sign.
yeah, that's a coincidence, or that's an accident, but we're actually co-creating our reality all the time. And what happens when we are on the internal, it is reflected in the external. I know a few years ago, I was pushing, and my body's like, mm-mm. And so I was dropping my husband to work, and as I was pulling it up into the gutter, I swear something grabbed my steering wheel and rammed it into the gutter. Now, my husband's like, "What are you doing?" And rah, rah, rah. I was like, "It wasn't me." Like, I was like, "It wasn't me." But when this tire hit the gutter, it was broken and it actually slashed the tire. And I knew my tires had to be replaced. So this was like the non-negotiable, also probably an intervention, like your tires really need to be replaced. Like it's getting dangerous now. Of like, you have to do this. Unfortunately, we just come into a bit more extra money at that point. So I was like, well, thank you for the timing of that. So then I was like, oh, where am I blowing out in my life? You know, where am I getting a blowout essentially? And then the next day I managed to find a company that come and change your tires at the office. I'm like, perfect. You know, it was all good. And then they ring me up and I was like, oh, do you need to move the car back somewhere? And they go, no, love, we can't actually start your car. The battery's gone. But the battery I kept getting for weeks, you need to change your battery, you need to change your battery, to the point my husband that day was actually going to go get a battery and change it over for me. And so I'm like stranded. I was so excited because I got to go home early that day, but I was stranded. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know what? This is such a reflection of my life at the moment where I'm pushing so hard that I'm going to run out of energy and I'm going to blow out. Like, you know, and this is what can happen. So that was me catching that and seeing that reflection in my car, because the external is a reflection of the internal, you know. So if you notice that, and then another one I had was, I could talk about signs all day, but another one I had was people were breaking bones around me. Like I was saying, I had a client break her hip, and then at the end of the week, a client broke her foot. I was generally concerned. I'm like, I am not breaking a bone. You know, like, what is this about? And then in the middle of that, like we have chickens, and one of my chickens fell off her perch in the middle of the night and broke her neck. And I was like, oh my, that was not fun to come to in the morning. But, you
No.
know, I was like, why is all this broken? And then my coach at the time, broken bones are breaking down foundations. I was like, my goodness, where do I need to break down my foundations? And it was actually letting go of the last stitches of identity I had of being a speech pathologist. I had to break that down and I had to fully let that go. And when I realized that, I was like, oh, great, I'm not going to break any bones. But if you don't pay attention, and I'm threes, as you can hear with my story, it always happens in threes, you know, 333. If it's in a 3, I definitely pay attention, because I'm like, all right, 3 is a master number. What do I need to master in my life right now? So this is where, when you pay attention to that, so if you ask for a sign and you get it, do something with that. Because if you don't, the universe just keeps turning it up and turning it up and turning it up. And then the flip side of that is, if you keep ignoring it, the next time you ask for a sign, they're not going to give it to you, because they're like, we give you signs and you're not even looking at them. You have to be open to receive them, and be open that maybe how you think life should be going is not how life is planned for you right now.
Yeah, we don't always see the bigger picture in the moment, and we tend to stick with what's familiar because it's comfortable. So, yeah, that can get us into trouble a lot of times when we're that resistant to change and resistant to growth. Side note, I don't have to put this in there if you don't want, but I was just curious, are you into astrology at all?
I dabble in astrology. So I just had my birthday actually. So I'm a Cancer sun, Cancer moon, and Aquarius rising.
Okay. I figured you had some Cancer in there. I'm a Cancer rising, Pisces sun, Libra moon.
Yeah. And what's interesting was when I had my human design done, this is just coming full circle, right? And this beautiful lady who was doing it for me, she was explaining it into really cool terms. And she's like, oh, you see how there's a lot of this number in your charts? And I'm like, yes. And she goes, that's because you're meant to be flooding the world with love. And I just started
Aw.
laughing. And I said, my goodness, she just answered like why I'm working in relationships. She goes, yeah, you're meant to be working with matters of the heart. This is what you're meant to be doing. And I was like, hey, then I understand. And you know what, Chelsea? I still get those clients where I get to do higher level spiritual work, or sometimes it is those clients turn into that. But because I was resisting that, where I was being pulled, it took a little bit longer than it should have. But I caught up now. I'm caught up now.
That's good. Well, also relationships are such a opportunity for growth and learning about ourselves. Not even necessarily romantic relationships, but relationships with people, because we marry each other. We show each other what we need to work on. And
Yeah,
so
we
it makes
definitely
sense.
reflect and
Yeah.
project.
Mhm.
And, and I guess that's that whole saying, you either grow together or grow apart. And I truly believe in that. And my marriage isn't perfect. We've had massive up and downs, but we figure it out. And I'm married to an Aries. I will tell you right now, as a Cancer, who I sit here and go, I know I need to do that. I'm just going to take 5 minutes for myself first and finish my cup of tea. And then my Aries husband charges in and he's like, we need to do this right now. And then my son's a little sad and we both just look at each other and we're like, what's dad's problem? I was like, this is just him. I said, if he gets an idea in his head, he needs to do it right now. I said, that's just the Aries. But an interesting thing that I've noticed too is a lot of people are using technology to justify their relationship, right? So it's like, but our compatibility with star signs is really amazing. I will tell you right now.
I've fallen into that trap. I'm
Yeah.
guilty of that.
My first husband and I were the most compatible signs. Apparently, according to my little astrology book, we were the most compatible. My husband and I now are the least compatible. I can tell you which relationship I feel a lot more seen, heard, and felt in. I'm still married to him, so this is where we can fall into that trap rather than trusting what we feel and that sort of thing. And it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't, yes, it's good to know your star astrology. Yes, it's good to know your human design. The point is, it's all tools to get to know yourself. It doesn't mean you use that as justification of, well, I'm just a Virgo, so it's hard for me to make a decision. No, you just become aware of that and you know that that's one of your shadows and you take steps to keep moving forward. But then you're also really good as a Virgo at planning and organizing. That is a skill set in itself, so take those strengths and use them to balance your weaknesses. Don't use them as an excuse. The other thing that I've noticed too is this growing movement of that's my ADHD or that's my autism or that's, whatever label it is that you have on yourself. They're just labels. You shouldn't let them limit you. Yes, they can help you understand who you are, but then they're also superpowers. Some of my clients I worked with autism had the most brilliant brains. I loved talking to them. First of all, they're so honest. You can't, it's like if you don't look good in a piece of clothing, they will tell you. There's no hidden facets there. But at the same time, they are some of the most powerful thinkers that I know because they see things beyond how we see them. It doesn't have to be this thing you wear as a badge of honor explaining anything that doesn't go in alignment. Instead, it's like, no, this is how I am. And I'm still going to work around that anyway because I understand that about myself and use that as a piece to become more authentic in who you are. But don't use it as an excuse for why something's difficult. That's my belief.
Well, I can't think of the movie. My brain's not helping me at the moment. I think it was Claire Danes that was in it that played
Temple Grandin?
Temple Grandin. That's it.
I love that movie.
Yeah, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking of Temple Grandin. So I had seen clips of the movie, and then I got curious, and I watched one of Temple's TED Talks, and I was like, this is amazing. This person's amazing. And it was one of those things, like, she leaned into her gifts and didn't let the stigma or some of the things that she was challenged with stop her from leaning into her gifts. And that's if anyone has ever heard of Temple Grandin or seen the movie, definitely look into that because it's very inspiring and it's a really cool. I could just listen to her talk.
Yeah. For this summary, she had high level autism. I would say she'd be level 2 or 3 if we're putting a level on it. She was nonverbal for years. They tried back then when she was younger, they were trying to put her in a psychiatric ward, but her mum just absolutely refused. No, it's my daughter. I'm going to help her. And her mum persevered and she ended up getting a PhD. And her PhD, because she loved cows, was in mooing. She actually wrote a PhD around mooing and everyone laughed at her and said she was crazy. But guess what, everybody? Spoiler alert, she revolutionized the cattle industry and heavily reduced the amount of cows injuring themselves when they were heading to the abattoir and saved companies millions, if not, it was, and she still does that, I'm pretty sure today, plus speaking about what she does. And she just found ways to circumnavigate her needs. And it is such a beautiful example. And thank you for bringing up Chelsea of, this is my difficulties. This is what's going on in my life. And I'm going to find a way around them anyway. And I'm going to be gentle to myself and acknowledge my needs. And at the same time, I'm going to be myself all through of that. So if you haven't seen it, Claire Danes is amazing in it. Absolutely fantastic. Just Google Temple Grandin and just see if you're feeling struggling with your life and going, I've got all these things happening, see that it doesn't have to be a limitation. It can be a learning point and somewhere you can jump off of.
Yeah. And no matter if you have a diagnosis of something or not, the capability of human beings
Amazing.
just, it's amazing. And I think we're, again, conditioned to believe that we're not capable of doing these amazing things. We have to fall in with the herd and do what everyone else is doing. So yeah, just in general, it's good to give yourself a little perspective of, even if you don't feel extraordinary, you are extraordinary.
You are. And, if you haven't figured out why you're here yet, that's the whole point of life, right? It's a
Yeah.
journey. And the more you follow your curiosity and joy, the more you'll just stumble into something that's exciting. And then you never know what's going to happen. So even when I started my spiritual journey, I didn't know exactly what to do. I have a lot of gifts. Like I even dabbled in medical intuition for 5 minutes. What that taught me was, first of all, I don't want to be a medical intuitive. Second of all, it doesn't mean it doesn't come up with clients, because I do have clients and it will be very relevant for, but what it taught me was miracles do happen if you both believe it will. So I had a client who had a surgery, and the surgery left her with an infection inside her body. And to correct that, she had to have another surgery to remove the infection. But her insurance company wouldn't pay for the surgery because she'd already had that surgery, right? And she was really unwell. I was doing a session with her and I said, I don't know. They're telling me that we're going to remove it. Like, this is what they're telling me. I'm going to do this process that I've read about. I said, you're the first person I've done it on, but we're just going to roll with it and we're going to see what happens. She's like, okay. A week later, she calls me up. She said, Catherine, all signs of the infection are gone. I was like, what? No way. And, I have moments like that all the time. And I'm like, and even I will be working with the client and get taken, because I work with Galactic. So for anyone who's not sure, we are not alone. I just want to emphasize that. And you can connect with species outside of Earth if you are open to it. So what's really interesting is that, like, me being curious led to me connecting with them, because I'm like, can I go visit these people? Yes, you can. Here you go. Here you go. And it's all that curiosity that leads you to finding your next gift or to finding why you're here. And I don't feel like I've even scratched the surface of what I can do, but I'm just constantly open, because the more you're open, the more you will drop the limiting beliefs and the more that you will step into your power, because we all have psychic gifts. We all have amazing things we can do. We just chose to forget, because that's part of being human. It kind of sucks sometimes. Some people don't. Some people are born to remember it and they help us through, and that's fine. But for the rest of us who have to go through the dark night of the soul and drop our ego and come back to our gifts, when you're in it, it's terrible. I'm not going to lie. It feels like crap, because your life's falling down around you. But on the other side of it, you're like, wow, this is so cool. I had no idea I could do this, or I never imagined my life this way. And that truly is when you step into your authenticity, because you're no longer putting labels on yourself. You're no longer putting yourselves in boxes. You're just allowing yourself to be guided to where you need to go.
Yeah. And speaking of getting excited about things and being curious and following your passions, you mentioned earlier that you have a new podcast. So can you talk about that a little bit?
I do. So I have a new podcast called Connections from Beyond, Conversations Across Realms. And I have a co-host, and his name's John Knapp. And John and I met on my podcast, which is called Willow Healing Matters. And he is a galactic Akashic reader and a galactic guide. And I was like, whoa, what is this? So we had a really cool first episode, and then he was running this kind of online conference, and I was really curious about galactics at that point. So I signed up and I ended up on his mailing list. And then he sent out this newsletter saying, I met a new species and I channeled through a new species. And there I was looking in the face, this AI rendering of who I was in a parallel life. And I wrote to him and I went, I know this species. I am that person in a parallel life. I'm actually writing a book about it, but I can't finish it yet because the life's still unfolding and I'm not allowed to put it on paper just yet. And he's like, no, really? And I was like, yeah. He goes, let's do a special edition episode and I'm going to channel them through and you can channel through too. I was like, oh, all right. So we had this episode together and it was so much fun, because if anyone channels, sometimes you really have to back yourself and you really have to trust what comes through, because sometimes you don't get proof for a little while. Sometimes you get proof straight away. Like the client might go, yeah, this happened to me. That makes so much sense. Sometimes it doesn't come to fruition till a few weeks later, and then they'll feed something back to you and you're like, that's where we said this, this, and this. And they're like, yeah. And sometimes you even have to help the client put it together, right? So to do something at the same time and both be getting the same information is pretty awesome. So then we went, well, why don't we do this all the time, but not limit to galactic? Let's talk about other realms. So we've had someone come on and she's talked, and we had guests as well. So we do our own episodes and we do guests. So we've talked about the Galactic Federation. We've talked about alternative realities and timelines. You know, we actually went into the future, Earth a million years from now, and we channeled through from the future, which was very, very cool. We're going to do an episode soon on black holes. You know, we have had the Mushroom Kingdom come in. We've had the fairies come in. It's just exploring all those realms that we actually have access to as humans. We've just forgotten we can go into them. So it's really exciting, and John's actually like a film producer as well. So he creates graphics to support what we see. And I love it. I'm like, this is like next level. Like my podcast, you know, you just got people talking, but this has movie images in it. Like, this is amazing. But this is when you're open, because at the end of last year, I'm like, what am I meant to be doing? And my guides are like, you need to learn more about galactics. I was like, okay, well, how do I do that? How do I do more of this galactic work? And then John comes into my life, clients come into my life, like all of them pulling me more into this. So if you're just open, I didn't know I would start a whole new podcast. You know, I didn't know I would find out these clients who I have to go to different councils to work, you know, different galactic councils to support them. You know, I didn't expect any of this, but because I was open and allowing, and all I did was like, okay, well, show me if you want me to work more with galactics, allow it to happen. And then all of a sudden, here they come. So yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love hearing things like that. And I know in my own life, there's a lot of parallels with not being certain or not knowing what's going to happen, but just listening to that little internal nudge or connecting, taking advice from channeling, divination, whatever you want to call it. And then magically the road just opens up and you're like, I didn't even know that this was a possibility. I love listening to other people's stories about that, because I think sometimes too, when you experience that, if you're the only person experiencing it, you feel a little bit crazy. You feel a little bit like, is everyone else seeing this? Is this other people's experience? What's happening?
Yeah, and from someone that can see underneath people's masks, and people will go, oh, they're so nice. And I'm like, nope, they are not. And I have visceral reactions in my body. So if something's really out of alignment, or someone's really terrible energy, I will want to vomit. And if they're really in alignment or like really high vibe, I will get goosebumps. So when I'm around people and everyone's like, they're so nice, I'm like, like they're like, no, like run the other way. And it actually happened at my child's school, the new principal. I was like, that woman's evil. There's other agendas there. I am not trusting that. Every time I look at her, I want to vomit, you know, and everyone's like, but she's so nice. And then a couple months later, another mum who's quite spiritual, she messaged me. She goes, that woman is evil and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh, thank you. But I had to stick to my conventions for a few months and just trust my feelings. And this is where my inner authority work really comes in, because your intuition already knows and you already know. It's just sometimes you have to have the courage to back it, because sometimes the noise around you will be yelling the complete opposite. But you're like, no, I know in my heart this isn't right. Or I know in my heart this isn't going to happen. And really trusting that, it takes courage. And some of my soul lessons are divine timing and trust. So you could imagine how pissed off I get off at the universe sometimes, because I'm like, I can see my timeline. Why has this not happened yet? It will happen at the perfect moment. When? Soon. What soon? So
Let's be more vague.
Let's be more vague. You know, and I find that with clients as well. I often have clients who want time frames. But the thing is, you can't absolute a time frame. Why? Because we all have free will. What I've learned now is I can get percentages. So there's a 90% probability this will happen in 2 weeks. But if you want to know an exact date you're going to meet your soulmate, I will tell you right now, you won't meet your soulmate. The reason is because then you put all your eggs in that basket. You're expecting that to happen and you don't allow things to unfold how they would. Your soulmate might bump into you at the coffee store a week earlier than that date. But because you're still looking at that date, you miss the interaction. Because if we're talking like for me, right? So if I had planned to meet my husband now and go, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to meet him like within 2 months of like leaving my marriage and I would have missed that. And we didn't start our relationship looking for, long term or anything like that. We were just having fun because we've both been in serious relationships, but when you step on the other side of that and you just allow things to happen how they happen, that is when magic really does happen because you're not putting all these conditions on it. Like I started at the start, the universe does not like conditions. So the more you're like, all right, universe, this is the person for me. I know that he's mine. I want to work towards that. It's like, well, actually, no. If he's meant to come into your field, and the message that always comes through is focus on you. Because the more you focus on yourself, the more you're happier in yourself, you find your joy, you found your foundation, you're walking through life curious and open and finding what lights you up. That is when you can attract the perfect partner, or when you can attract the perfect opportunities, or you can attract the clients you've been looking for because you've suddenly just focused on yourself. And my example is when I listen to my body and I actually rest and have a nana nap, in the middle of the day, it's like my body's like, you really need to rest. I'm like, okay, all right, my child's okay. I can just sleep on the lounge for like 20 minutes. It'll be fine. I will wake up and I'll either have had a client book in, an invitation to be on a podcast, or money rock up in my bank account. It happens nearly every single time. And I'm
That
like,
should be a good motivator.
I know. I was like, how have I not learned yet that these things happen? Or when you take your attention off what is. So sometimes we push things so hard and we've been so conditioned, especially with the hustle culture, push, 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 push. We push it away. And this is the thing, if you put too much energy into something and you try and control it, you end up pushing it further away from you. It's when you actually surrender and release that you're able to receive.
It's funny. 2-3 minutes ago, the word surrender was popping in my head and you just incorporated it. So that's one of the things I was going to say. Surrender is definitely key to a lot of things, but also knowing that the external stuff, other people, like you can't control any of that. So there's a lot of moving parts to creating your reality. It's not just, I want the thing and the thing's going to happen. How many things have to happen before it gets to you in whatever form it needs to be at? You know what I mean? How much?
Yeah.
And think about that too. Like how many steps did I have to take? 2 years ago, I started taking steps to be where I am today. How much had to happen between now and then? So it's a process, and trust the process.
Yeah. And I can promise you, the more you choose yourself, the more the universe will work with you as well, because they're like, oh, great, she's getting the lesson. Okay, let's step her forward, or like, let's send this person. And sometimes, it might be like, I just want someone to guide me with this. I need help. And then the next day you're on Instagram and then someone's post pops up and you're like, this is exactly what I need. It happens to me all the time. And, I'll be like, there's something missing with this client. What are we missing? And then I open Instagram and there it is right there. I'm like, thank you, universe. Show me more. That's what I actually say. Thank you. Give me more. Or thank you. Show me more. Because the more you acknowledge it, the more they'll go, yeah, she's paying attention. She's seeing that. Even if you're struggling with money, first of all, if money lands at your feet, please pick it up. That money is for you. Unless you genuinely see it fall out of someone's pocket, then that money is for you. We've been conditioned to go find it or hand it in or whatever. No, God's put that money there for you. And then what you say is, thank you, show me more. You go pay for something at the shops and you get a discount when you pay. Thank you, show me more. Whenever you have something that aligns, money shows in your bank account for no reason. Thank you. Show me more. I can't tell you the amount of times I've had weird things happen where I really needed some extra money and then get a message from a company that I was with 10 years ago. Oh, we lost a lawsuit and we overcharged you. We're going to put this money in your bank account. Just fill in this form. I'm like, really? And I ring them up and I'm like, is this real? They're like, yeah, what's your bank account details? We're giving you $100. Thank you. Show me more. So the universe works this magic if you allow it to, and if you work with yourself and allow it to flow. But the more you try and control, the less you actually will have control. I know it's so counterintuitive.
It's a universal joke where they're like, let's see if they can figure this out.
Yeah. Yeah.
You gotta go this way to go that way.
Exactly.
So, oh my gosh. So this has been such a good conversation. I feel like we could probably have another one. So if you're ever interested in coming on again and having another conversation, I would love that. I will post all of your links and everything down at the bottom. So everyone watching, if you want to get a hold of Catherine for her services, feel free to check stuff out down there. Is there anything you want to say or any takeaways before we wrap up?
I feel the biggest thing is that you can never lose betting on yourself. So if you can start to learn to do something just small for yourself every day, if you feel lost, do something that brings you joy, that allows you to come back to you. And the more you do that, the more it will start to pull more of that into your life. So it doesn't have to be big. If you're a mom, I understand sitting down and having a warm cup of tea or coffee can be a big thing. Maybe start there. Actually drink your coffee or tea hot, instead of luke cold because you forgot about it. Or maybe just spend 5 minutes of each day reading. Whatever it is, just start to fill your cup up so that everyone else can get the extras, not your whole energy in the first place.
Yeah, we all need to hear that. Well, thank you again so much for being on here, and we will see you on the next Transformative Talks. Thanks for tuning in to Transformative Talks. Be sure to follow along on your favorite podcast platform and connect with us on social media so you never miss a new episode. A quick reminder that this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended to replace medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you're a holistic practitioner, wellness professional, or someone with a healing journey you feel called to share, I'd love to hear from you. Visit our website, listed below in the show notes, to learn more and to connect. Until next time, keep growing, keep exploring, and keep embracing your own transformative journey.